Hello, and thank you for joining today's Technical Assistance webinar. My name is Elio Peraza, and I'm the ALS Program Coordinator at NIH's NINDS Division of Neuroscience. I'd like to welcome you to today's discussion about the ALS Intermediate Patient Population Expanded Access RFA-NS-26-001, which was published on May 4th, 2026. During today's pre-recorded webinar, we will cover several topics, including the purpose and background of RFA-NS-26-001, also known as the NINDS ALS Expanded Access Program, key requirements and considerations, eligibility information, and other important things to know as you consider applying for this opportunity. Today's presenters will include Dr. Amy Tso in the Division of Clinical Research and Dr. Emily Caporello from the Division of Translational Research. There will also be plenty of time for questions and answers after this recorded presentation. We will do our best to answer any questions submitted through email or the registration form, and also questions submitted in the Q&A box within the webinar.
This is a reissue of a funding opportunity the NIH released to implement a component of Act for ALS. As you may know, Act for ALS was signed into law by President Biden in December of 2021, and Section 2 of the law directed the NIH to set up a grant program to conduct scientific research using data from expanded access for investigational drugs and biological products in ALS. NIH started implementing Act for ALS in fiscal year 2022 and has funded 5 studies since then. Specifically, this funding opportunity seeks to fund expanded access for an intermediate-sized population of patients living with ALS who are not otherwise eligible for ongoing clinical trials for the prevention, diagnosis, mitigation, treatment, or cure of ALS. The FDA considers an intermediate-sized patient population for an expanded access IND to be more than one patient, but generally fewer patients than are treated under a typical treatment IND or protocol. Here are some key dates for applicants to know. The application due date is June 8th, 2026. Scientific peer review will happen in July of 2026, and the earliest start date for projects would be September 2026. One quick note, this funding opportunity has a second receipt date, November 10th, 2026. Applications submitted to this November receipt date would have an earliest start date of July 2027. Also, I just want to note that Act for ALS will sunset in September of this year, and we would only be able to award any applications submitted to that second receipt date in November if Act for ALS is reauthorized. This slide includes key requirements and considerations for this RFA. First, we want to emphasize expanded access is regulated by the FDA. Thus, it's critical that applicants provide documentation such as a may proceed email or letter from the FDA prior to receiving NIH funding. Furthermore, applicants must submit an intermediate-size expanded access IND application to the FDA no later than the same day the grant application is submitted to the NINDS. It's important to highlight the investigational drug or biological product must not be approved under a new drug application or licensed under a biologic license application. If this is the case, the medical product would not be eligible for this program. Institutional Review Board approval of the protocol and informed consent documents are not required at the time the application is submitted. However, they are required prior to funding or the initiation of treatment of patients. Applicants must follow NINDS guidelines for monitoring clinical trials, which can be found at the NINDS website noted here. Also, they must describe a scientific research goal. The expanded access protocol will provide patients with access to treatment with the investigational medical product and simultaneously generate data to support research or development related to the prevention, diagnosis, or treatment of ALS. Such data can include biomarker data, safety or outcome information, or patient experience data that is not specifically tied to efficacy. Applicants must also describe how the proposed expanded access research program will not interfere with patient enrollment in ongoing clinical trials for investigational therapies for ALS. And finally, applicants are strongly encouraged to establish relationships with patient advocacy groups to solicit input on recruitment, the clinical meaningfulness of the question being asked, the relevance of the proposed clinical outcomes, and approaches to minimizing the burden on study participants.
Next, a few words about eligibility criteria for RFA-NS-26-001. It's important to note that the applying organization must be a participating clinical site within a definitive efficacy trial designed to provide pivotal data to support a marketing application for an ALS drug. Both Phase 3 and Phase 2/3 interventional drug trials qualify as definitive efficacy trials under RFA-NS-26-001. In addition, the sponsor of the definitive efficacy trial must be a qualifying U.S. small business concern. Please note that the drug sponsor cannot apply to RFA-NS-26-001 directly, as the applicant must be a clinical trial site. Ideally, the expanded access study proposed under RFA-NS-26-001 will be approved by the FDA at the time of application submission. However, applicants may submit their expanded access IND to the FDA anytime up to the day they submit their application to NIH. Now we'll take a closer look at the requirements for the investigational ALS drug proposed to be studied under RFA-NS-26-001. The drug may be a biologic or a small molecule, and the drug is eligible from the onset of the clinical trial until a regulatory determination has been made regarding approval. The drug cannot be approved under an NDA or BLA. Also, the definitive efficacy trial does not need to be active at the time of application, but it does need to be active by the time an award is made. Finally, please note that the drug sponsor must be a U.S. small business, which is defined under the United States Code. Please note that NINDS cannot determine whether a sponsor is a qualifying small business. The drug sponsor must determine this and certify eligibility prior to award.
One new aspect of this year's funding opportunity is that programs can now apply for competitive renewals. To apply for competitive renewals, applicants must be an expanded access program that is complete or in the final year of their project period. To apply, applicants must continue to satisfy the other eligibility criteria, being a clinical trial site for a Phase 2/3 or Phase 3 trial sponsored by a US-based small business. Also, the drug or biologic must not be approved by the FDA. Applications submitted for renewal must be a new full-length standalone application. For this funding opportunity, the due date for renewals is also June 8th, the same date that new applications are due. As a new application, new scientific research aims distinct from those pursued in the first grant period should be outlined. These research goals may build on work done in the first period, but as a separate application, the research goals should be distinct, not simply a straightforward continuation of the research performed in the prior project. Also, renewal applications should provide information about what progress has been made towards obtaining regulatory approval during the award period. This could include information about progress made in the qualifying Phase 2/3 or Phase 3 trial. Depending on what stage the trial is at, this might include evidence of ongoing enrollment, new site activations, knowledge gained from analyses performed, and interactions with the FDA. If the pivotal trial is ongoing or a subsequent pivotal trial is planned, recruitment goals and the estimated timeline should be provided.
NIH provides many online resources to assist you in applying for NIH funding. To get started, we highly advise going to grants.nih.gov, the website shown here, where you will find an extensive list of resources to help you with writing and submitting your application. If you are unable to find information you need, you are welcome to reach out to us at NINDS with any questions you have. It is important to follow all application instructions to avoid having your application withdrawn. Make sure to read the full text of RFA-NS-26-001 carefully, follow the instructions within the application guide, stick to page limits and formatting instructions, provide complete budget information, and follow guidance for additional plans and attachments. If you have questions as you are preparing your application, we welcome you to reach out to NINDS program staff.
All applications submitted in response to this funding opportunity will be evaluated for scientific and technical merit through the NIH peer review system. We're grateful that the Center for Scientific Review will run the peer review process for this funding opportunity. The peer review mission aims to see that all grant applications receive fair, independent, expert, and timely scientific reviews that are free from inappropriate influences, so NIH can fund the best research. Only the review criteria described in Section 5 in the funding opportunity will be considered in the review process. NIH is now using the simplified framework for NIH peer review criteria. Reviewers will consider factors 1, 2, and 3 in the determination of scientific merit and in providing the overall impact score. In addition, factors 1 and 2 will each receive a separate factor score. So let's talk about cooperative agreements, or so-called U-Series awards. Cooperative agreements are a support mechanism that NIH frequently uses for high-priority research areas that require substantial involvement from NIH program staff. This programmatic involvement goes above and beyond the normal stewardship role NIH program staff typically take on. However, NIH program staff will not assume direction or primary responsibility in the research activities. The dominant role and primary responsibility will reside with the award recipients. Benefits of a cooperative agreement can include: it allows for an active partnership between NIH and the investigator team with more frequent communication. Also, an NIH program scientist will be part of your team. And it will allow us to connect you with resources across NIH to resolve challenges and overcome barriers. This slide provides an overview of the roles and responsibilities for cooperative agreement awards. The principal investigator of the research team will have primary responsibility for the overall scientific and administrative leadership for the research project as a whole. This includes performance of the study, reporting recruitment data, conducting quality control, data analysis and interpretation, and modifying the study design if needed. Award recipients will also retain custody of all the research data developed under the cooperative agreement and have primary rights to these data. NINDS staff will have substantial programmatic involvement in the project and will assist, guide, coordinate, or participate in project activities. For each award, an NINDS project scientist will work jointly with the award recipients in a partnership role and will serve on the primary leadership committee and potential subcommittees as a voting member. An NINDS administrative program officer will be responsible for programmatic stewardship of the award. And last but not least, a third NINDS program official from our Division of Clinical Research will serve as the NINDS liaison to the Data and Safety Monitoring Board, or DSMB. Areas of joint responsibility include having access to the data generated under the Cooperative Agreement Award and periodically reviewing data and administrative progress reports, providing scientific and programmatic support during the award period, overseeing the adequacy of adverse event management and reporting, and monitoring progress of study milestones. Sharing of biospecimens from these expanded access studies is a key aspect of this funding opportunity and will be facilitated using 2 established NINDS repositories. Biospecimens must come from study participants who have consented to banking and sharing broadly with academia and industry. Costs for the biospecimen collection, such as costs for collection kits, shipping kits to sites and shipping samples must be covered by the grantees and should be included in the application's budget. The NINDS BioSend repository is available to bank blood, spinal fluid, or urine collected from study participants if the applicants propose collecting these. Applicants should request a quote from BioSend at the link shown and include this information in the application. Similarly, the NINDS Human Cell and Data Repository is available to bank human cells if applicants propose collecting these. Please request a quote from NHCDR at the link provided to determine the costs. Finally, all data that is collected needs to be shared through the ALS Knowledge Portal. This is a data repository that is funded through Act for ALS. Applicants will work with the NINDS program staff to determine the appropriate construct and timelines for uploading the data that's generated from the project into the portal in keeping with the NIH data management and sharing policy.
Thank you for attending this portion of the webinar. We will now transition to the Q&A session. Please submit your questions in the Q&A box in Zoom, and we kindly ask that you limit your questions to those directly related to this funding opportunity. We will do our best to address as many questions as possible during the remaining time. Following the webinar, a recording and an updated list of frequently asked questions will be posted on the NINDS events webpage in the coming days for your reference.